The connection between toxic capitalism and abortion. What is toxic capitalism? Toxic capitalism is essentially when capitalist values are taken to an extreme and begin to have negative effects instead of positive ones. The two main effects of toxic capitalism are that they encourage seeing people only in terms of how useful or profitable they are, human capital, and encouraging discrimination against minorities. Here you can see a map of state restrictions on abortion. Abortion was legalized across the country in 1973 after Roe v. Wade, a Supreme Court case that essentially set the new federal standard that abortion was generally legal. However, individual states can still make laws about what qualifies you for an abortion and how you have to get it. These laws are often designed to make getting an abortion as difficult as possible and are backed by pro-life organizations. There are two ways that abortion has become a market in this country. The first is that women are treated as products, which we'll talk about more later, and the second is that getting an abortion costs money. The U.S. healthcare system is not free or public, meaning that many people have to pay a ton of money to get an abortion, and others profit off of that. Valuing human capital more than happiness. So what is human capital? Human capital is defined as the skills, knowledge, and experience possessed by an individual or population, viewed in terms of their value or cost to an organization or country. There are two ways this aspect of capitalism can influence abortions. On an individual level, women may choose to have abortions because they do not have the resources to do what they want in life and raise a child at the same time. This can be anything from simply not wanting to become a mother and not being emotionally ready, to physically not being able to bring the pregnancy to term. A common argument is that a woman should never have an abortion because the baby could have grown up to do something amazing. But this argument is somewhat invalid, as if a woman was going to do something amazing, she may now not be able to, since she has to raise a child she did not want. The other side of it is government. A government may put restrictions on abortion to keep women working in the home. Although not paid or conventionally viewed as labor, keeping a home running and raising children is a necessary job. Society needs people to fill that place, and when the women stop doing that, a government may force them to by making them bring unwanted pregnancies to term. In recent years, a controversial comparison between women without bodily rights and slaves has been gaining popularity. Women can become slaves in the sense that if they are not given the choice to abortion, they are forced to do labor, raising children, for the society as a whole. Here is a quick graph of the increasing number of abortions being allowed for various reasons worldwide. Although there are many factors that contribute to this, part of the reason that we may be seeing this trend is because since the end of the Cold War in 1991, Western democratic countries, specifically the US, have begun to move away from capitalism, the younger generations favoring a more socialist approach to government. In many European countries, governments have begun enforcing more socialist policies, therefore making abortion more widely accessible. Encouraging discrimination against minorities. Because of the greed is good attitude that toxic capitalism produces, the general competition of the environment of these societies leaves little room for people to help each other. With people's silence on the matters, social issues such as the oppression of women and people of color continue to be a problem. With the emphasis on human capital, the government can start to treat women as a product and only think of them in terms of childbearing and raising. As for people of color, the government has given very little aid over the last few centuries to raise them out of the socio-economic troubles that remain as a ghost of slavery. Connections between toxic capitalism and racism pertaining to abortion. This quote is from Red Pepper, a British non-profit magazine that covers left-wing issues from around the world, and is an excellent example of the correlation between the oppression of racial minorities and the oppression of women. Some statistics to go along with the previous slide are shown here. These percentages apply to the state of California from 1909 to 1979. As can be seen, no white women were receiving a sterilization on the basis of race, and the percentage of Mexican Americans being sterilized was higher than any other race. At the time of the sterilizations, the population of California was only 1% African American. Despite this, they made up about 4% of the forced sterilizations. There is a theory circulating that abortion was only made illegal in the US so there would be some unpaid labor in the home after the abolition of slavery. Abortion was only criminalized when slavery was dissolving, and the Church did not speak out against abortion until 1869. The Catholic Church often said that abortion before quickening, or when the woman could feel the fetus moving, was fine. The sudden change in heart accompanying other major social and political change may serve as one reason for the restrictions on abortion. In any market, there are better products and less desirable ones. When women's bodies are treated as such, there is always room for someone to impose discriminatory policies. Therefore, the capitalist desire to maximize profit can easily lead to systemic racism. Abortion may have been criminalized for the purpose of keeping free labor in the home. It continued as a market, and at times, people have been deemed more or less desirable. Today, not everyone who needs an abortion can afford one. People of color are disproportionately impacted by the cost of an abortion, as they tend to be poorer in this country. For more information on racism and abortion, please view the slideshow above. Connection between abortion and mental health. Studies have shown that when women are denied abortions, they tend to become less healthy mentally in the future. This not only affects them, but also their child. The child can end up being neglected, which results in mental health problems for the child and often leads to higher crime rates. As it is usually people of color who have less access to abortions, these high crime rates only deepen the prejudice against them. Unsafe abortions and a woman putting her body in danger can also be mentally damaging. Problems with the U.S. abortion system include that a woman may stay in an unhealthy or abusive relationship to pay for the abortion. Having to pay for the abortion can result in someone losing all their money, and women getting abortions have to face walking past the anti-abortion protesters outside clinics. And here in the picture you can see that in some places, protesters have become violent at times, and it has gotten so bad that personal escorts are needed for the woman's safety. Biases against women and abortion. Okay, so how does this tie into the bias against women? There are three main factors that influence the bias in relation to abortion. The first is the perception of women. When a woman becomes pregnant unintentionally, she is often the one faulted, while the man is not blamed. As for health care, women are generally the ones expected to bring or be on birth control. Even though men have just as much access to effective methods of birth control as women, they are not blamed when protection is not used. Finally, the expectations for women. If a woman becomes pregnant, she does not have the resources to manage the baby and achieve her goals. She can be viewed as weak. However, when a man has too much on his plate, it is acknowledged that he is overworked. In conclusion, there are several things that make getting an abortion difficult in this country. The first is that women are viewed as products, meaning that the government may restrict their rights and try to keep them in the home. Secondly, abortion is a market, and not everyone can afford to pay for the healthcare they need. Historically, there have been policies, whether they are sterilization, the cost of abortion, or state laws about access, that make it harder for people of color to have rights to their bodies. Both being denied an abortion and getting one in the U.S. can have lasting mental health effects on both the woman and the child if they are born. Finally, there are many social expectations that differentiate between men and women in terms of their responsibility for their bodies. Overall, if abortion was not a market and people had access to it no matter their background, there would likely be far fewer problems associated with it.